Hey everybody, welcome to Geek Rant and happy Halloween. Today we're going to be talking about the 1982 classic The Thing. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us tonight. We're going to be talking about a classic film for our Halloween special. This was actually, and this is going to be horrifying to some of you because I'm a Geek Rant pro. This was actually a film I hadn't actually seen before,
Yeah,
and it was a good suggestion from Toby.
yeah. Well,
And it was,
it's a classic. And when you said to me you hadn't seen it,
yeah,
I thought it's gonna be interesting to see your reaction to a
absolutely,
film that you
absolutely.
haven't seen before.
No, I know. Well,
And
funnily enough, I think I've actually seen the 2011 remake without actually having seen the original.
yeah,
I've probably that probably wasn't as good. Again, I've only seen that once, and it probably wasn't very good, or like they do with most remakes these days. So it kind of
well, you
didn't make
say
me want to
that,
see the original.
but it was the prequel because that one
Ah,
is set in Norwegian base. So that's kind of
right.
like that's
That
the story
explains.
before
Brilliant.
the
Well,
way it
that's a good
ends up.
idea. That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that's what I thought, and
That's
I didn't
really
realize that
novel.
myself either. I didn't realize that until
Brilliant.
recently either. So
No.
it's kind of like I mean, this film has other origins because it's a remake
Yes.
of the thing from the world from another world,
Yeah.
and it's that, and then is actually based on a short story, which is called
Yes.
Who Goes There.
Yeah.
And there, so it's a funny kind of origin story for a film that actually John Carpenter saw when he was a kid, and it
Oh, that's
terrified
interesting.
him. Yeah,
Right.
and
Right.
so it's basically it's a bit like Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Yeah. Yeah.
They remade that from an earlier 50s film.
Yeah. There's a lot of those, isn't there? The Day the Earth Stood Still and things like that. They were all old classic things that kind of get remade, and I suppose that's what we're doing these days, isn't it? We're getting some of these 80s, 70s films
Yeah,
and remaking them now,
yeah,
as they would have done for the 50s or whatever. So
yeah,
it's funny how it sort of comes around, doesn't it? These these
yeah.
these ideas and these storylines.
I think it's that nostalgia,
Yeah, yeah,
that the sensations you get when you're a kid. Can you
yeah,
recreate them? Can you
yeah.
relive them? It's become big business these days, isn't it?
Yes,
With
definitely, definitely.
nostalgia,
I
you
mean,
know.
there's so many films now, isn't there? That a lot of the Star Wars stuff is very nostalgia based, isn't it? To try and recapture some of the glory day of Star Wars. But
Yeah,
yeah, yeah. But getting back onto this film, I have to say I did really enjoy it. I thought it was a really great film,
yeah,
and considering it's what 40 years old now,
yeah,
I actually think it stood up really well to the test of time. Yes, they looked, a bit dated in their clothing, and Kurt
yeah,
Russell's beard was amazing.
yeah.
He and his hair.
Oh my
Um,
lord, his
uh,
hair. At
yeah,
one point, we Joe and I were watching it again the other night, and
yeah,
we said he's a self-appointed leader because of his hair.
yeah,
He takes control, doesn't he, on numerous
yeah,
occasions in the
yeah.
film.
It was
And
funny.
it's
They
like
did
because
all kind
he's
of look to him as well, didn't they? Even though
they
he was just
did
like the
they
pilot.
did, yeah, he was
Yeah.
the pilot, but
Mm.
yeah. So I mean, as a film itself,
Yes.
considering it's Halloween,
Yeah.
it's actually sci-fi horror.
Yes, it is.
So
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
although people hold it up as like one of the classic horror films of all
yeah,
time, I like
yeah.
to look at it as a sci-fi horror
Mm,
because the actual horror that you experience in the
mm,
film, which is
mm.
really really grisly,
Yeah.
is sci-fi
Oh,
orientated.
yeah,
It
definitely.
is an alien.
It's otherworldly, isn't it?
It's otherworldly, and we get
Mm.
this in the first shot. We get this scene of a spaceship
Yeah,
crashing.
yeah. And
On
it was really interesting because there's
yeah,
there's a lot of other films that you see, that have got a very similar, identical shot to this, haven't
Yeah.
they? When you
Yeah.
see
Yeah.
Predator, when you see a
Yeah.
lot of those films, you see this same sort of shot. And I kind of like, I wonder if that's something that's come from this, that they've
Yeah. It's true.
subconsciously, they like, that. I think that was really interesting. I was
Well,
like, whoa, that's like seeing the beginning of Predator.
well, within the context, they obviously there was a lot of call for sci-fi after
Yeah.
the success of Star Wars,
Yeah.
and using matting techniques, filming the model and matting it into the shot, because that model you see is proper size model that they've
Yeah.
made out of
Yeah.
metal and plastic,
Right.
all lights up inside.
Cool.
Yeah, really, really beautiful
Mm.
model.
Mm.
And so it's only in it for like seconds.
Yeah.
Bang, and that's obviously in the past.
Yeah.
That's that the aliens crashed on the planet a long time ago. So this is like before. This is the setup, and it's just momentary, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a nod to the sci-fi element of the film.
Definitely.
And we can talk about that later on as we move on, because it has other metaphors.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting that at the time as well, E.T. was just coming out in the cinemas.
Yeah.
And so this film wasn't that well received.
Anything like that? No, it wasn't.
Nothing like E.T. I mean, you couldn't get anything any more
well, it was
different
actually,
than E.T.
which I thought was really interesting. It was actually released the same day as Blade Runner.
Oh.
So I think that's probably another reason why it didn't do quite so well in the cinema and attract a big crowd. So that's quite strange that it went up against that, in the cinema.
And well, another thing as well that was surprised me that because it's by John Carpenter.
Yeah,
it had that, because he did a series. He did Escape from New York and
yes.
The Fog, running up to this.
Yeah,
and so he would have had a following of people who liked his style of film.
Yeah. I mean, Escape from New York is brilliant. I do love that film.
Yeah.
We'll and again, that film, Kurt Russell, his performance in that is brilliant. Cheesy, brilliant.
He's understated so often with the way he does things, isn't he? I think a lot of the best actors are like that.
Yes.
Like Bruce Willis, he's quite understated in a lot of the stuff that he does, isn't he? Sort of like a underrated action hero. I think to a certain extent, Kurt Russell's a little bit like that, because he doesn't need to shout too much. He's so cool. He
is.
He's a handsome chap, and
he's a good-looking guy with blue eyes.
The hair, I get hair envy watching this.
Oh yeah.
But so I mean, he's already established a friendship with John Carpenter, having done Escape from New York. So he pulls him into this production. And we're all gone.
There are some good actors in it, the doctor. I can't remember all the actors' names, I'm afraid, but the doctor's quite a well-known actor, isn't he? The black guy's in it. He's been
Richard
in
Richard Dysart.
Yeah, there's some good
Keith David
good performance. Yeah. I think I just like about these kind of films is they don't get too bogged down in a massively intricate, over the top plot. You can keep it quite simple and rely on, and this very much does the tension, the paranoia. It's very primal, isn't it, in its approach? They're all becoming more and more, who's the thing, who's not. And it really sort of develops like that, doesn't it? And it's quite it draws you in. Draws you in because you're like, I wonder if he is. And that.
Well, it starts out, and you see because it's based in the Antarctic.
That's right.
And the crew, all the crew that they film on site. I mean, all the interior shots are shot back in a studio.
Yeah.
But they shoot all the external shots, and all the actors are there.
Yeah.
Within this this base they've made on this plateau.
It's like it's a research station, isn't it? Science station or something, They don't really, and that's the thing, they don't really explain what they're doing there, why they're there, There's
No.
none of that sort of,
and the mix of characters you've
explanation.
got there are just completely bonkers.
It is, isn't it?
Some of them seem like they've got some serious mental health issues, but yet they're in this Antarctic base,
in the isolation of the Antarctic, completely to go mad.
On the edge of an ice shelf. You know, it is crazy. I mean, but so you get this atmosphere, this isolation, which becomes more and more evident as you move into the show, and you're drawn into this little community, and you see this dog coming along the snow, and there's a helicopter following it, and this dog's he's
just sort of just
loping along,
Lassie's just jumping along,
and this guy, he's shooting, and he cannot hit this.
He cannot shoot for dick, can he?
He can't. And it gets worse. I mean,
it does.
This opening's, for me, this is the worst part of the film.
It's
the worst bit.
I can totally see why they've done it. They needed to introduce the dog to the people.
Yeah, of course.
And they needed to get rid of the Norwegians as well, so that they couldn't explain anything to them, you know?
Yeah.
That's why they blew themselves up.
It's a massive red flag. I mean, so this dog, they're trying to kill this dog. I wonder why. I tell you what, we'll let the dog just enter the base after. It doesn't matter. Anyway, and then they throw a stick of dynamite at the dog, but it seems to go backwards and completely misses the dog about a mile off.
It's a grenade. It's like a little grenade thing, isn't it? Yeah. He pulls the pin and goes, whoa, and he goes behind him, doesn't it? And blows up the helicopter.
That's when he lands. He's already thrown one from the helicopter, and it was stupid.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was that. Yeah, that was crazy. And then, of course, the main guy, Gary, who's Lieutenant Gary. He smashes out a window, which I think was a bit stupid anyway. Because you're gonna get bloody cold.
Well. He just smashes the window out. I'm like,
-40 degrees. I know. Anyway, he shoots this guy in the head.
He does, doesn't he? He just blows him away.
He's trying to shoot the dog rather than the other people, wasn't he? I don't know. It's a completely bizarre start, but But I think that there's a couple of moments in this film you just have to suspend your disbelief, because they needed.
I just took that as a point of they just needed a way to introduce the dog, and kill anybody else that knows anything about the dog and what the dog can do, what will happen with the dog,
and try and make it a bit dramatic. They had to tie in the Norwegian base into it somehow.
They did
as well. So this was a good way of doing that.
Yeah.
So they end up kind of with this dog just wandering around the base after this incident.
And he's a very nice, easygoing dog.
Wolf. This dog in real life was half wolf, half dog.
Yeah.
And you can see that in him. And he's very happy and
cuddling them all.
Yeah. And at this point, we're starting to get to know some of the characters already, aren't we?
Yeah.
Apparently, in those scenes where they're outside and they're filming, it's so cold. The actors are like, they're standing there. And initially, when they started to film, they had the actors' faces covered with the actors naturally put the scarves up and the goggles on around their face.
Yeah.
And then they started talking, and nobody could tell who was talking.
Oh, right.
So they made them all take their masks off.
I wonder if that's why they had such massive beards.
Yeah,
I wonder if that's why they did the huge beard.
I have no idea.
Keep his face warm.
Yeah, I mean, but that just sort of talks about the extremes that we're dealing with here. And you get a sense immediately, and you go, who are these people, in this base, and what are they like? Who are these characters? They just start to throw characters at us because we kind of experienced their little canteen area. We've already seen McCready pour his drink into the chess computer, haven't we?
That's it. Yeah,
got beaten by the chess computer, and they're playing.
Well, he's very grumpy, isn't he? He's obviously not coping well with the isolation as it is. Before any of this kicks off, he's already up in his little office, isn't he?
Yeah,
away from the rest of them, grumpy as fuck. And there's a lot of sort of I sort of noticed how antagonistic the characters were with each other. And
they're clearly divided into little groups, aren't they?
Yeah.
you've got a couple of doctors there, a couple of researchers, and you've got a couple of maintenance guys, maybe. You know, I think looking back to sort of Alien, it's a similar sort of crew, isn't it? That they had that sort of dynamic. And with some workers maybe, and
people who were running the station, maintaining it, making sure things were working,
absolutely,
definitely.
And the dog is obviously infected. Now you've got one of the guys Clark, who looks after the dogs. Apparently in real life he said he loved working with that dog. It was just amazing. And he said he said when he was asked who was his favorite cast member to work with, he said the dog. And he was damn right.
Oh, that's nice.
I know.
None of the people.
He loved it. But they then go and see the Norwegians. And
Mac takes the doc, doesn't he? And and another guy with them. And this for me is kind of a thing I quite like. Is the go in to see what's happened on the abandoned station. It's you see this a lot in things like Star Trek. There's lots of episodes, and I always love that where they've got to go and sort of piece it together and work out what's going on. And there were some gruesome bits there, weren't there? They get there and it's a complete sort of burnout. All the place has been burnt up. There's dead bodies.
That is actually the same base that they shot the other one on, but after they've blown it up.
Oh, really?
They shot that bit at the end.
Well, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's sensible. Recycling. I like that.
They rebuilt some bits, but it's largely the thing that they blew up beforehand.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that makes sense, doesn't it?
I think entering a crime scene, if you like that, is always curious. You know that something bad is going to happen, or something bad has happened. What are they going to find? And
a little bit like they go and see it. They see all these dead bodies. They come back, and then it's kind of like, we've kind of half forgotten about all that crazy shit that we've just seen.
They bring that twisted corpse back, don't they?
Yeah, they bring the twisted corpse back. Yeah, that's true. And that's.
And they have a scene where they're all looking at that, don't they? And they're like, and the body's all twisted and formed and.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, this for me is one of the real strengths of this movie, and it's of that era when obviously there's no computer graphics or this was all stuff that was made, wasn't it? And that body was made to be able to sort of
Rob Bottin. Rob Bottin was the special effects animatronics guy. Now this is his film in a sense. John Carpenter is a director, but Rob Bottin is he basically came up with a lot of the concepts that we see. So he came up with the idea of a monster that changed shape a lot.
Oh, right.
He did this whole series of drawings of the monster taking different forms and infecting people, and John Carpenter said, "Let's go for it," because he was actually, I think he was something like 22 when he did this. He basically got an apprenticeship with Rick Baker. Now, Rick Baker was the special effects supervisor for the American Werewolf in London.
Ah, right. Yes.
Okay. Now so he was quite young when he got in, because he'd sent some images to Rick, and he'd said, I want to do this, and he was impressed. He took him on board and taught him how to mold and create these effects and plan, because there's a lot of planning involved. There's a lot of sort of brainstorming. And at the same time, the same year, the American Werewolf in London was getting the Oscar for special effects. So it was going up against the Thing, and the fact the Thing didn't even get a nomination for special effects.
Oh, really?
At those Oscars, which is quite a staggering thing to think about. When you look at some of the stuff that then comes up, his film in a way, he's most known for the effects. Some of the sequences in this film,
they are pretty out there, aren't they? They're pretty incredible, and considering it was all done sort of physically, wasn't it? They had to make a lot of this stuff. real, because like I say, there weren't loads of computer graphics or anything like that. We saw computer graphics in it, and it was pretty basic, wasn't it?
That's true. Yeah,
But I thought that bit was great as well.
yeah, it was good.
but the way that the thing, whenever it was like it was built to change and come open and something else come out, and like, and it was more, it wasn't, I didn't think it was really scary, but more freaky, that it's kind of just like this, don't want to
body horror type
yeah
stuff.
yeah
it was very messy.
yes
I think that's one thing that really characterizes Rob Dussein's work. Messy. Skin just serves to be pulled and stretched, doesn't it?
And that bit, do you remember the bit where the dog is in with the other dogs, and he's like spraying stuff all over the place?
So they get back.
The one dog is getting like coated in stuff, and it's like going,
well, I mean, they get back, don't they, from the base with the body. They have a look at that, and then they put the dog away with the other dogs. And they put it in. The guy walks off. The guy who looks after them, Clark, and he then the dog then starts to transform virtually instantly. And there are some other dogs in there. Now this dog's thinking the alien is obviously in dog. He's saying, right, I want you dogs as well, so I'm going to take you and pull you into me or become you.
It kind of absorbs them, doesn't it? It's sort of absorbing them, or is it? I don't know if it's supposed to be getting some sort of sustenance from it, or what. It's a weird
bizarre
concept.
And I think there are a couple of things like that in this film which you never really get to understand.
They don't explain it.
No, that's great.
It is good. It's good.
I mean, we don't know whether the dog knows it's an alien or the humans that get infected thereafter. They don't. Do we know that they know they're infected? We don't.
Well, the only one I think we might know is was the doc guy, because he goes down, doesn't he? Makes the ship. He's like trying to make a ship to get away, and I wondered if that's the
scene that everybody sort of quotes as being the thing that doesn't fit into the film. That scene, it doesn't seem to make any sense, that bit. No. That's the anomaly in the sequences, but you don't know whether other people know or whether he's aware, and there's a certain whether he knows what he's doing, whether he's aware of making anything. There's a certain mystery about this creature. And it doesn't seem to be any sense to how it transforms or changes or what it morphs into.
No.
But I mean, there's the dog is definitely turning inside out to a certain extent, isn't there? There's insides coming out of this creature. And there's because the dogs start barking. This dog gets sprayed with this liquid.
Tentacles sort of come out and grab them, don't they? And well, I'm thinking if it's got this stuff in, like not molecules, but you know what I mean, that are gonna go everywhere. It's they would all have been infected.
That scene with the dog's quite controversial, because a lot of people complained about that, the dog, and how it appears to be mistreated. But they did have specialists on site. They did have so it was it was all done sort of above board, So in any case, at this point, it kind of magnifies in size, and suddenly the dogs start barking. Everybody starts running, and MacReady has taken control of the situation. When Gary is meant to be the one in charge, he's kind of he's not quite with it. MacReady calls for Charles to get the flamethrower. And they all come to this spot.
He starts shooting it. He tries to shoot it with the shotgun, doesn't he? And it's not really having an effect.
He starts to shoot some of the other dogs as well, because he sees them sort of changing and morphing.
That's it.
This big thing rises up. This big mouth opens.
It does.
And then suddenly this creature lifts itself out. You see like a hand come up.
Yeah, I thought it went up into the roof, didn't it?
Into the rafters.
It smashes the roof and goes up, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But then it's like they're flaming it, and they don't really sort of. I presume some of it got part of it.
They must have seen that. They were all watching.
Yeah.
Some of them must have seen that thing get into the system.
Yeah.
I thought that was another weird.
It was a weird moment, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was weird.
Sometimes they were really sort of stand and watch things happen, and it's like, holy,
yeah, and some of them are pretty much terrifyingly paralyzing, aren't they?
I suppose
Yeah.
if you saw it in real life, it might just
it would completely
you
freeze
might
you.
just be
But then they seem to forget that this thing's gone into the rafters of the building.
Yeah.
To sort of get on, don't they?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, they're examining that body, aren't they? They're thinking, what the fuck is this? And that's when the doctor then starts to examine it a bit more, doesn't he? And
Yeah.
he this is where we get the amazing computer graphics. Where he's on the computer and
Blair, he's cutting up. Apparently in real life, he's used to doing that sort of thing because he's like a hunter and he cuts up deer. And apparently when they were shooting it, he was like getting into it, really getting into pulling out these guts and stuff like that.
This is how you do it. Well, he was, wasn't he? He was like, it's got kidneys and it's got heart and lungs and it was really
Wilford Brimley, that is. Yeah. And so we get this moment, don't we? He's come to a conclusion. He's come to a conclusion.
He's put his data in the computer and it's told him the whole world is in trouble.
The data, the sequence, the sequence with the computer, the cells.
It was brilliant. I was
like, is this serious?
Wow, this is good stuff. This is good.
They did that on like a C-16 or something like that. It was like
it was brilliant.
It was. And it went on for so long in my mind.
It was.
I was like, is this going to end? He started to get the message. You're like, oh, yeah, we see what they're doing here. And then he gets this like text saying the world's going to be wiped out in
basically
2,000 hours. And apparently he then sort of loses it, doesn't he? He has a kind of mental breakdown.
Yeah.
And we kind of...
He tries to sort of stop anybody contacting them. He tries to, he damages the helicopter. He damages anything that means they can get a signal out.
Yeah.
He's taken this view. We got to kill it here. It's got to be destroyed. But the guys all jump him, don't they? They stop him. They jump him and they put him in a cabin. He wasn't really tied up, was he? He was just left in the cabin.
He was.
And isolated and
with a bottle of vodka or something like that.
Yeah. And then
because they said he's lost it, but he didn't seem to be. He wasn't writhing around, was he? Smashing things. He was just sitting there. Like, I'm defeated.
And, I mean, over the next 3 or 4 hours, he manages to dig 50 feet of snow out, create a spacecraft, and have a whole sort of that bit I thought, where did that fucking come from? Was that there in the first place?
That's just like thrown in there kind of randomly. I don't know why they did that. It's kind of very strange. That they should even they didn't have any need to do it. It wasn't. No. I wonder whether there was something else that they intended to do with it, but they left that bit in for some reason. I don't know why.
Yeah, what I thought was quite good was that it wasn't one of these films, and again, because I hadn't seen it before, so it was quite nice to sort of, it wasn't one of those films where you didn't know there was an alien there. Do you know what I mean? And that it was silently killing people off, and then till at the end you work out, oh, there's an alien here. Yeah. This pretty much happens straight away, doesn't it? The dog thing happens, everybody sees it, and they all know this monster's there. And I suppose that gives it all this tension and this. Everyone starts to sort of go against each other. I mean, there's a whole bit where Mac is totally isolated. They work out, or they come up with this idea that if they find some clothes that have been sort of torn and ripped up, that the creature's obviously come out and done its thing. And they find some overalls that were...
Which is very weird, shredded with his name on.
With his name
where did they come from? I mean,
exactly, where did that come from? But they then instantly think he's the monster.
As you would potentially.
If you're feeling paranoid, definitely.
So I mean, they're even more paranoid, aren't they? Yeah, they block him out of the snow. They're even more paranoid because the dock has already Blair has already smashed up the helicopter and the radios and all that stuff. So they're now the isolation is even more intense. The
Yeah.
storms come in, so you can see they can't see outside, and so there's this, they're really kind of piling on the paranoia into the situation that you're talking about now. So they find the clothes, and they're even more worried now. You know, oh, hang on a minute. You know what has happened here. And
but I loved it that he broke back in and got the
they lock him out,
and holds them all to ransom, doesn't he?
It's brilliant. I love it. I'm gonna blow you all up and me.
You know,
go on then, do it.
I know, it was brilliant. And then we kind of get into this sort of, all right, we've got to find a way that we can work this out. And
this is the best scene of the film. This whole sequence is just fabulous. It is awesome.
When they were talking about how we're going to work it out, they said, there's a blood store. Let's go to the blood store. So, you know, and again, that was a little bit of a plot hole because
nobody knows who did it.
Yeah, nobody knows who did it. It was clearly Harry. You thought it was hit. So when
because he had access to he had the key, didn't he?
Yeah, but he doesn't remember opening it. So it was like, hang on.
Could this be because when they're possessed, they don't remember? You know?
Yeah, but he wasn't possessed, was he?
No,
he tested him later, and he wasn't possessed. So that didn't kind of make sense in my mind. But
I think that's a bit open to interpretation, isn't that?
It was the stress, stress.
So they've already figured out they need to test for it. Yeah. So when old McCready gets back in from being locked outside, he's come up with an idea for a test, hasn't he?
Yeah. He'd seen one of the things die, hadn't he? And also that the guy's had a heart attack or something.
Oh yes,
and he's pressing on his chest, he's doing it. And this was an amazing bit. I thought, amazing bit. He put his hands right through his body.
Did you know that was coming?
I knew something was going to happen.
But did you know how you hadn't known that was the scene?
No, I hadn't seen that before. I was like,
someone experienced that for the first time. It's like
his arms, and his arms are in there, aren't there? And suddenly, and this is where the creature madness is. Someone with a really sick mind has come up with this. The jaw, it's like Jaws suddenly, isn't it? His chest has become like Jaws. Snaps, cuts the guy's arms off, and he's like,
because he's still holding on to the defibrillator inside the body, so his arms are in there. So you don't know the story to that one, then? So basically, they had to come up with a really. How do they shoot this scene? So the actor got his head there, and they've cast his body, complete cast of his body, and it's obviously his head sticking out. He was in this harness for 10 hours as they got this ready, and he couldn't have anybody talk to him. It was terrible. And they had this contraption on the front, and inside are some like a bear trap drawers.
Oh god.
Trigger. Okay. Now, when they to actually trigger it, he pushes
to push down and hit, and
it goes well.
Right.
They like cut it there. They cut it there, and the arms that you see, are made of jello with veins run through them, and like bones set in the jello.
Brilliant.
So they actually cut, and the person who you see is. They hired this guy who had lost both his arms.
Oh God, I see. Yeah, of course.
And they then attached the damage to the bottom of his stumps.
Yes.
And they recast the doctor's face, and had to wear like a face mask and put it on this.
What, like Mission Impossible?
Yeah. And so he's flying back and screaming with this scene. They had so many risky scenes in this.
I know, and it was quite amazing because then you see the head sort of droop backwards, don't you, off the back of the table, and it like drops down onto the floor, and then sprouts some legs and some antenna, and starts crawling about on the floor, and it's like Kurt Russell watches it just walk past him, and I was like, what the hell? What the hell?
I don't think he sees it though. He doesn't see it, does he?
Do you not see it?
No, I don't think he sees it. And then
like,
what? then I think who's the
Then he
is it
flames
Larry and a Palmer? Palmer
Hmm.
sees it. You gotta be kidding, or something like that. He says, and then
Fucking yeah,
yeah, Kurt
yeah.
Russell then blasts it. But he's
Blast it.
obviously he's figured it out, isn't he? That
He's figured out that it
yeah,
will always try and flee from or get away from the danger. And so he comes up with this idea: let's take some blood samples, and what I'll do is I'll heat up some metal, and if I put it in the blood, it'll try and you know. And
yeah.
this
So
was this was
this
like
is
one of the best bits of the film, wasn't it?
yeah, it
Where
is.
he's
It
trying
is
to do all
great
this,
scene.
they're all tied
Well,
up.
it's
He's got
funny
the
and it's
dynamite in one hand,
terrifying.
doesn't he? He's got the dynamite. He's got some
And his
things.
beard's all covered in ice and he's looking all
Flamethrower.
ice and
Yeah,
desperate. He's got that crazy look in his face. There's in this scene, there is I don't often get
brilliant.
caught by a jump scare, but in this scene, there I get
yes.
I get
The
caught
bit
by
where he puts the wire in
yeah.
the thing and that stuff comes out.
And I've seen it.
That was good, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. So he's testing the blood. They're all tied to the seat.
Yeah.
And
the end one is jumping up and down.
Yeah,
And he's like,
Palmer's blood. It comes around to Palmer's. Now they've got this fake hand that they're holding like this.
Yeah, I wondered why it looked so odd. His hand.
Yeah, he was holding
it
like this,
fake.
and it's a fake hand. It sticks it in it, and this thing shoots out of it. It's a really great. It's a great moment.
Brilliant.
They'd already established that there was a hand there.
It wasn't
Kurt Russell's hand.
But that triggers the alien that's inside the guy who they're taking the blood, doesn't it? And
they're all tied to chairs.
Yeah.
And they're lined up in these chairs, and this guy's turning into the alien here at the end, and they'll get us out of here.
He goes like,
it was hilarious, and McCready's trying to get his flamethrower to work.
It's
taking him ages. He's trying to shoot. Windows has got his flamethrower there as well.
That's right. Yeah,
but that doesn't quite.
They're a bit slow to react sometimes, aren't they? In this, but but they managed to kill it, don't they? They managed to get that one, and
well, I mean, it gets up and it throws his tongue around Windows net and pulls him in.
That's right. Yeah, and clamps on his head, doesn't he?
Yeah,
and it's got he's picking him up, and it's like there's some good freaky stuff in this, isn't there? It's really well done.
And he flames him up, and then he tumbles out through the building, through the wall into the snow. This guy on fire. And it's a proper fire suit. And there's a scene where some of the people in it were so close to the fire, they were at serious risk of death. So this guy who's in this fire suit, he can't breathe. He's got to hold his breath, because if he breathes, he'll burn his lungs out. So he but interestingly, this scene is actually it's duplicated from the original film, The Thing from Another World, and it's a straight copy. So it's a homage to that scene. So they have a similar one where the thing gets killed and flamed in the original film, and this is like Carpenter. That scene probably stayed with mind. John Carpenter his whole life. It's pretty terrifying to see anybody on fire, even when you know that they're not going to die. But it's pretty. God.
I mean, so it then pretty much gets down to the last. They got to try and sort the doctor out, and there's only 3 of them left now, 3 or 4 of them left. They decide we've got to destroy the whole place. We've got to kill it all, even if it means we die. And they go down to the boiler room. There's a sort of underground boiler room place, isn't there? And again, don't let anybody wander around on their own. So they just all go wandering off on their own to get killed. There's a lot of that going on in this, isn't there? I can't trust anyone, and they've gone off on their own again. And it's like, come on, guys, get your shit together.
Need to keep eyes
stay
on
together.
Everybody. Anyway, one of them wanders off and gets lost and never see him again. And then we're in a situation where we're faced with the beast. And this originally they'd shot it as a stop frame animation.
Right. Stop motion.
Stop motion. And they basically they built this massive rig, and they did the animation, and they cut it in the end because it looks so different. There's only one scene where a tentacle comes out and swipes, I think, a can of fuel down into a hole or something like that.
Yes. I thought that looked different. Yes. When they first see it going under the ground sort of thing, an arm comes up, doesn't it, and grabs that can or something, and it did look different.
Yeah, that's the only bit they left in.
Yeah,
but then the rest is back to our good
live
old Rob
props.
Boutine. Monster is like suddenly. I think this
you
point,
see a bit of the dog. You see some of the other bits. It's kind of like
an amalgam of all the creatures that it may have. I think at this point as well, Kurt Russell has said, "We're going to die anyway.
We're going to die."
Yeah. So we're just going to blow everything up. So they said about blowing everything up, and that includes obviously the face-off with the alien at the end. But I thought this was an interesting concept to sort of introduce, that they're gonna die. So let's just take everything with us.
I think I wasn't sure how I felt about the end of the film. When it's
quite controversial. I think
they've killed the creature. Kurt Russell's managed to get away. He meets with one of the other guys.
Childs just turns up.
Yeah, he wandered off. He said, "Oh, I thought I saw him going off over this way," and then and they both sort of just sit there, don't they, and say, "Well, there's just not a lot we can do now, is there?"
Yeah, he says he saw Blair wandering off, didn't he? But Blair was supposedly underground making that spaceship. So how did he see that?
Yeah,
and the end apparently is improvised. They didn't really have an ending.
That's interesting.
So Kurt Russell just made that line up.
It was just a slight bit of but then I sort of thought to myself, well, how are you going to finish a film like this? It's a horror. It should be that pretty much everybody gets killed anyway. Do you know what I mean? It's you're normally left with one or two people in these sorts of things, aren't you? So I wasn't quite sure about how to do that. I mean, there were some other bits in it that I thought they went to the Norwegian place, they had the videos, and I wish that there'd been a little bit more from the videos, and like some more freaky things to really fuck with the minds, I think that would have been really good. I mean, do you remember that film Event Horizon?
Yeah, it terrified me when I first saw that film.
That terrified me as well. And that's something that's always kind of been a bit like, ooh,
I haven't actually gone back to watching that film either.
No,
I'll be honest.
That bit where you see the video of the former crew, and they've all gone mad and doing all sorts of weird sadistic stuff. It was like, holy shit!
Interestingly, here's a little bit of interesting thing. They used that same trope in Enterprise, in one of the episodes in Enterprise, where the Vulcans have gone crazy because of this
they're in the expanse, aren't they?
Yeah, they're in the expanse.
They can't protect themselves from the effects of the expanse.
They're affected by it, and you see this footage of them attacking each other,
well, which is a direct to see
Event Horizon link.
I was hoping to see a bit more down the line, that they'd looked at the Norwegians' tapes a bit more and seen some more stuff go on. They showed it a little bit, but they didn't really sort of. And then the other thing that I thought was a real sort of like, okay, they've just found us. They go out. They look at they do look at the Norwegians.
They
plans,
do. That's right. Yeah.
And they see, they went over
they
here.
Find the spaceship.
They find the spaceship, and it's like there's not any real thought about. They just found the bloody spaceship. They're not really sort of worried about. I suppose they're worried about the alien thing that's starting to kill them all. But I was a bit like, whoa. There's no showing inside the spaceship. There's that.
That was all a matte painting by Albert Whitlock. Albert Whitlock, who did all the paintings for Hitchcock. Strangely, in all of his films, they pulled him. It's still within that era time, So there was obviously nothing there. So they just throw that in. It's a great shot where you see the spaceship in the expanse, that kind of that big white plane, but they couldn't really do much more with it, so it's a shame, really. But I think one of the things that's telling is they shoot a lot of it out of sequence.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's just poor directing or the climate or whatever, but sometimes their motivations don't seem to be right. Sometimes I feel like they need to be more scared by what they're experiencing. They seem quite laid back at points when there's this killer is around. I would be absolutely terrified, and it would be really, you'd be coming up with a more sound plan than what they had.
I was just going to say, the other thing that I want to mention was obviously they had music that was done by Ennio Morricone, and who did all the spaghetti western sort of stuff, and there was tinges of his music in there, wasn't there? There was some good,
definitely,
and it did add to the atmosphere. His very basic sort of boom 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 sort of music, wasn't it? And as I understand, I actually heard that he didn't sort of have the opportunity to produce the music, with the film. That he produced some music, gave it to them, and they were able to use it in places and do it how they wanted. So it wasn't like he directed a score, like you would for a movie where you're doing it over the movie, like a John Williams or something. But that's quite interesting because some that actually gets used in some of the off cuts of that gets used in the Hateful Eight.
Okay.
By Quentin Tarantino. So there's a few bits in there that it's sort of
bit of a nod there.
Film. That's
interesting. I mean, it is a bit sci-fi, isn't it? The sound of the music is a bit. There's something about it that it kind of fits the brand.
Yeah,
and also interestingly, the picture, the font that comes up in the beginning. Where they burn away paper from behind a stencil is exact copy of the original film.
Right, brilliant.
So if you watch them together, they're exactly the same.
They're
the same technique, and it's a complete homage to that. And
that's nice, isn't it? That's
it is nice.
That's a nice little nod back to the inspiration, isn't it? Really. No, it's good.
And I think that is it. I think John Carpenter made something that was we had a little window into some of the horror that he experienced as a child, through this film.
Definitely.
And it was quite visceral. And then we have on top of it Rob Bottin adding in his flavor, because he did The Howling before this, which is quite a gruesome werewolf movie, and he then goes on to do RoboCop, Total Recall, and there are some great gruesome, grisly moments in there. His brand of very visceral special effects gets mixed in with John Carpenter's horror. It was like a really good combination.
It kind of contrasted slightly, didn't it? It was it was totally like shocking. It suddenly just happened, wouldn't it? Like the bit with the arms going in and chomping it, and the bit where the things would come up and sort of split out, and it was, and it was very different to the rest of the film, because there was a lot where they're talking, they're trying to suss out who's doing what, and suddenly then there'd be this dramatic thing in your face. It was like, whoa, Jesus.
I think
good. Really good.
I think that it's easy to sort of see these, to see and think lots of goo and blood and splatter, but actually there's a lot of sculpting that goes into these creatures. These are real artists doing these jobs. And
the preparation for it must be horrendous, and you probably only get one shot at it. That's the thing with these sorts of things, because if it's ripping apart, and then
the chest thing was a one shot. It was one shot.
You get one shot, don't you? So you have to make sure it works. So definitely, there's a lot of craft that goes into these things, and it's a pretty well shot film, isn't it? It's put together well, and like I say, it felt like it stood up quite well to the test of time.
Completely.
you could
completely.
really watch it now. There's a lot of films that you go back to that era and you think, oh my god, that looks really bad. But I
Yeah,
think I think because the monster stuff is so weird and so out there, it could be
yeah,
an alien thing, that you could expect.
yeah.
So
And combine that with the environment, the isolation,
yeah,
the
yeah,
location, which was genius. But I mean, that comes from the original story as well.
yeah, yeah,
That kind of
yeah,
isolation that goes with it. That
yeah.
that there's not much you can question about that, is there? Because it
No,
doesn't
no,
change much. There's
no.
not there's the computer scene, but that's a bit stupid. That kind of that's dated. But
Yeah,
other than that, if you have an
yeah.
Arctic base, it's going to be a bit like that, isn't it?
It
Even now,
is. That's very
so
true. That's very true.
there's a
Yeah,
certain
yeah.
sense it's not that old
No.
in some respects. There'd still be a
Yeah,
jukebox, but it'd be a retro jukebox now, and there'd still be a pool table. It'd be probably a
yeah,
nicer looking pool table, but
yeah, yeah.
it's similar kind of. It kind of holds up, and they
It's a
don't.
good point, isn't it?
It
Yeah.
doesn't bring too
If it was
much
in a
in.
city or
To,
something,
yeah,
you would really notice it, wouldn't you?
yeah, with all the
But because it's
cars as
somewhere
well, for
like that,
instance.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
you'd really notice that. So
you would,
yeah,
you would.
no, it's good. Well, I thought it was great fun. I think it's a great movie.
Yeah,
Up there with a one for people to really get out and see.
yeah. A real Halloween horror
Yeah,
movie. You could sit down and really get scared, and lots of grisly goo and blood, and
yeah,
really, really fun. And of course, real bonus for me personally is it's sci-fi as
yeah,
well, because
yeah,
that really takes it to the next level.
absolutely. Okay, well, thanks for watching with us today. We've really enjoyed talking about that. That's great fun, that film. Good Halloween special. Obviously, if you like what we're saying, we'd love it if you'd subscribe and comment. Um, and also have a great Halloween, whatever you're up
Yeah.
to.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we'll see you again soon.